"Thief!" Clarence Holt bellowed, his boots stomping into the dusty backstage where Tala wove her Navajo rug. Her fingers froze on the loom as Holt sneered at her sick sister Winyan, calling her a burden, and demanded simpler rugs to sell cheap. In a flash of rage, Tala hurled a spool of thread, striking Holt's shoulder, but when he shoved Winyan to the ground, her frail body racked with coughs, Tala's heart shattered. Now, with Holt's accusation of assault ringing in her ears and the threat of arrest looming, Tala faces a brutal choice: betray her sacred Navajo art to save Winyan or flee to protect her heritage, leaving her sister behind. Tala, a 25-year-old Navajo woman in 1920 Arizona, weaves traditional rugs with patterns that carry her people's stories, but she is trapped in a white theater troupe, forced to play the mysterious native, while her intricate rugs are sold as props. Living in a cramped tent with her 14-year-old sister Winyan, who is fading from tuberculosis, Tala battles to earn money for medicine while shielding her art from exploitation. Her secret love for James, a white playwright in the troupe, sparks hope but draws scorn from both her Navajo community, who see her as a sellout, and the whites, who view her as an outsider. Torn between preserving her culture and saving Winyan, Tala uncovers Holt's plot to steal Navajo designs, thrusting her into a fight for her heritage, her sister, and her heart. The Arizona sun dipped low, casting a warm glow through the canvas flaps of the theater's backstage. Tala sat cross-legged before her loom, her fingers dancing over the vibrant threads of a Navajo rug. Each weave told a story of her people, stories she clung to in this strange world of grease paint and spotlights. She glanced at the small pile of coins beside her, barely enough for Winyan's medicine. Her sister's cough echoed in her mind, a constant ache in her chest. Tala hummed a Navajo lullaby, its soft notes grounding her as she worked. A white theater-goer peeked through the curtain, his curious stare making her skin prickle. She ignored him, focusing on the intricate pattern, but her hands trembled with the weight of her worries. Winyan needed her, and every thread she wove was a prayer for her sister's survival. As she tied off a red strand, the backstage bustle grew louder, and Tala braced herself for the evening's performance, knowing her rug would be paraded as a prop, not art. Winyan shuffled into the backstage, her thin frame swaying under the weight of a tin cup. Water sloshed over the rim as she offered it to Tala, her pale lips forcing a smile. Tala's heart clenched at the sight of her sister's hollow cheeks, the tuberculosis stealing her strength. "You should rest," Tala said, taking the cup and brushing a strand of hair from Winyan's face. The girl shook her head, insisting she wanted to help, her voice barely a whisper. A chilly breeze slipped through the canvas, and Winyan shivered, her cough rattling like dry leaves. Tala wrapped her own shawl around her sister, pulling her close to share warmth. Winyan's eyes sparkled as she spoke of learning to weave like Tala, her dreams of fragile light in the dim space. Tala hugged her tightly, hiding her tears, and promised to teach her soon. As Winyan leaned against her, Tala felt the weight of her sister's trust, a vow she couldn't break, no matter the cost. Clarence Holt stormed into the backstage, his heavy boots kicking up dust. His voice boomed, calling Tala's rug too fancy for the audience's taste. Tala's fingers tightened on the loom as he demanded simpler designs, ones he could sell cheap to theater-goers. His cigar smoke stung her eyes, but she met his gaze, her jaw set. Holt sneered, bragging about the money he'd made off Indian trinkets, and Tala's stomach churned at the insult to her art. She remembered her mother's words. Every rug was a piece of Navajo soul. Holt leaned closer, his breath sour, and ordered her to start new rugs by morning. Tala's heart pounded, but she shook her head, refusing to let her heritage be cheapened. His face reddened, and he jabbed a finger at her, warning her not to cross him. As he turned to leave, Tala's hands shook, torn between fear of his power and the fire of her defiance. Holt's eyes landed on Winyan, huddled by Tala's side, and his lip curled. "That sickly girl's useless," he spat, his words slicing through Tala's heart. Winyan shrank back, her eyes glistening with tears, and Tala stepped in front of her, shielding her sister. "Apologize," Tala demanded, her voice steady despite the rage boiling inside. Holt laughed, a harsh bark, and called Winyan a burden who'd dragged Tala down. A nearby actor glanced over but quickly looked away, unwilling to challenge the boss. Tala's fists clenched, her nails digging into her palms as she fought the urge to scream. Winyan's small hand tugged at her sleeve, whispering, "Don't fight because of me." Tala's throat tightened, her love for her sister warring with the humiliation Holt heaped on them. She glared at him, her eyes burning, and vowed silently to protect Winyan, no matter what Holt threw at them. Tala's voice rose, clear and firm, as she refused Holt's demand for simpler rugs. "These patterns are my people's stories," she said, her hands gripping the loom like a lifeline. Holt's face twisted with anger, his shout echoing in the cramped backstage. He called her a fool, saying no one cared about Navajo tales. Tala stood tall, her heart racing, remembering her grandmother's lessons about honoring their craft. She told Holt she'd rather leave the troupe than betray her art, her words sharp with conviction. His eyes narrowed and he stepped closer, his shadow looming over her. "You'll regret this," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. Tala's breath caught, but she held his gaze, her defiance a shield against his threats. Winyan's soft whimper behind her reminded Tala why she fought, and she swore to herself she'd never let Holt break her spirit. Holt's voice turned cold as he threatened to fire Tala, saying she'd never find work in Arizona. He leaned in, his finger jabbing the air, and warned he'd call the sheriff to lock her up for defiance. Tala's stomach knotted at the mention of Sheriff Norton, Holt's ally, whose name struck fear in her community. Holt pointed at Winyan, his cruel words cutting deep. "That girl will die without you, and it'll be your fault." Tala's eyes flicked to her sister, her frail form trembling, and her heart twisted with dread. Holt smirked, sensing her fear, and gave her until morning to comply. As he stomped out, Tala sank to her knees, her hands shaking. She pulled Winyan close, whispering apologies, but the weight of Holt's threats pressed down like a storm cloud, threatening to crush her resolve. James, the troupe's playwright, rushed into the backstage, his face pale from overhearing the argument. He stepped between Tala and Holt, his voice firm as he told Holt to back off. Holt sneered, mocking James for defending a savage girl, but James didn't flinch. He called Tala the heart of the troupe's authenticity, his words a quiet rebellion. Tala's chest warmed at his support, but fear gnawed at her, knowing James risked his job. Holt warned James to stay out of it, his fist clenched, but James held his ground, his eyes locking with Tala's. He gave her hand a quick, reassuring squeeze, promising to find a way to help. As Holt glared and stormed off, Tala felt a flicker of hope, but worry for James's safety mingled with her gratitude. She watched him leave, her heart torn between trust and the fear of dragging him into her fight. Holt's temper flared as he shoved past James, his arm catching Winyan's shoulder. The girl stumbled, collapsing to the dirt floor, her coughs tearing through the air like gunshots. Tala screamed, dropping to her sister's side, her hands trembling as she saw blood speckle Winyan's lips. James lunged at Holt, demanding an apology, but Holt shrugged him off, claiming Winyan fell on her own. Tala cradled her sister, her tears falling as Winyan gasped, "I'm okay," her voice weak. The sight of her sister's pain ignited a fire in Tala's chest, her fear swallowed by fury. Holt's cold eyes met hers, daring her to act, but Tala's only thought was Winyan, her fragile body shaking in her arms. She rocked her sister gently, whispering Navajo prayers, her world narrowing to the desperate need to save her. Tala's rage boiled over, and she grabbed a heavy spool of thread from her loom. With a cry, she hurled it at Holt, the wood striking his shoulder with a dull thud. He yelped, clutching the spot, his face contorting with shock and fury. Actors gasped, their whispers buzzing like flies, and James pulled Tala back, his voice urgent, begging her to stop. Holt pointed at her, roaring that she'd pay for attacking him. Tala's breath hitched, regret flooding her as she realized the consequences of her impulse. Winyan's small hand clutched hers, her eyes wide with fear, and Tala's heart sank, knowing her actions might cost them everything. She stood frozen, the spool rolling in the dirt, as Holt's threat echoed, a noose tightening around her future. Holt charged out, shouting for the sheriff, his voice carrying through the theater. Minutes later, a deputy arrived, his badge glinting in the lamplight, and Holt accused Tala of assaulting a white man. The deputy scribbled notes, his eyes cold as he sized Tala up, ignoring James's protests that Holt had provoked her. Tala's pulse raced, the word wanted ringing in her ears as the deputy declared her a fugitive. She glanced at Winyan, curled up on a blanket, her coughs weaker now, and panic clawed at her chest. If they arrested her, who would care for her sister? The deputy left, promising to return with a warrant, and Tala sank beside Winyan, her hands shaking. She whispered a Navajo prayer, begging for strength as the weight of her choices pressed down, threatening to bury her. Tala supported Winyan's trembling frame as they stumbled back to their small tent under the Arizona stars. The night air was heavy with dust, and Winyan's coughs cut through the silence, each one a knife in Tala's heart. Inside, she settled her sister on a worn blanket, tucking a shawl around her thin shoulders. Tala boiled water over a small fire, stirring in herbs her mother had taught her to ease Winyan's pain. The girl's eyes fluttered, her voice weak as she apologized for causing trouble. Tala shook her head, brushing tears from her cheeks, and promised Winyan she'd fix everything. A neighbor's shout broke the quiet, warning that deputies were asking about Tala in town. Fear gripped her, but she kissed Winyan's forehead, whispering Navajo prayers for protection. The tent's canvas walls felt like a trap closing in, and Tala's mind raced, torn between hiding Winyan and facing the law. She clutched her sister's hand, vowing to keep her safe, even as the shadow of Holt's accusations loomed large. Nika slipped into the tent at dawn, her arms full of cornbread wrapped in cloth. Her warm embrace steadied Tala, who poured out the story of Holt's cruelty and the sheriff's threat. Nika's eyes flashed with anger, but her voice was soft, reminding Tala of their shared strength as Navajo women. She recounted her own fight against traders who undervalued her rugs, urging Tala to stand firm. Winyan stirred, offering Nika a faint smile, and Nika promised to watch over her if Tala had to flee. She pressed a beaded bracelet into Tala's hand, its turquoise stones gleaming with hope. Tala's throat tightened, grateful for her friend's loyalty but terrified of the choices ahead. As Nika left, she vowed to return with news from the tribe, leaving Tala staring at the bracelet, its weight a reminder of the community she might lose. She sat beside Winyan, her heart heavy with love and fear, praying for a path forward. Tala knelt by her loom in the dim tent, her fingers tracing the unfinished rug as she weighed running to her tribe. She pictured the mesas of her homeland, where elders might shield her, but Winyan's shallow breaths anchored her to the present. The journey would be too harsh for her sister's frail body. Tala counted their coins, a pitiful handful that wouldn't cover a doctor's visit, let alone travel. Stories of Navajo fugitives hunted by sheriffs haunted her, their endings grim. She closed her eyes, whispering to her ancestors for guidance, her voice trembling. The tent flap rustled, and Tala froze, fearing deputies, but it was only the wind. She looked at Winyan, sleeping fitfully, and her resolve hardened. Tala decided to stay one more day, hoping to find a way to save her sister without sacrificing their heritage. Her hands gripped the loom, the rug's patterns a lifeline to her courage. James crept to the tent under cover of night, his knock soft but urgent. Tala let him in, her heart lifting at his familiar face, though worry lined his brow. He admitted he'd argued with Holt, nearly losing his job, and urged Tala to stay with the troupe to earn money for Winyan's medicine. His hand brushed hers, warm and steady, promising to talk Holt into dropping the charges. Tala's chest fluttered, but she feared his kindness would pull him into her storm. She spoke of her love for him, her voice barely audible, and the danger it posed in a world that scorned their bond. James's eyes softened, vowing to stand by her, but Tala's doubts lingered, knowing both their communities would judge them. As he slipped back into the dark, promising a plan, Tala sat by Winyan, her heart torn between hope in James and the weight of her impossible choices. Tala's voice was firm as she told James she couldn't weave simpler rugs. Each thread held her ancestors' stories, sacred and untouchable. James nodded, his eyes full of respect, but warned that leaving the troupe could mean arrest and no medicine for Winyan. Tala's hands shook as she described the humiliation of being a spectacle for white audiences, her pride wounded daily. She admitted her feelings for James, her cheeks burning, but feared their love would spark more hatred from both sides. James squeezed her hand, his voice low, promising to fight for her no matter the cost. Tala pulled away, insisting she must face this alone, her heart aching at the distance she forced between them. As James left, his silhouette fading into the night, Tala sank beside her loom, tears falling onto the rug, her soul torn between her duty to her people and her love for her sister and James. A small scrap of woven cloth lay outside the tent at dawn, its intricate Navajo pattern catching Tala's eye. She picked it up, her fingers tracing an unfamiliar symbol stitched in black thread. Whispers of the dream weaver, a mysterious Navajo figure, echoed in her mind, tales of a guardian who left signs for those in need. Tala searched the shadows, but the desert was still, no trace of the stranger. The symbol resembled Holt's scrawled signature, sending a chill down her spine. She tucked the cloth into her pocket, her heart pounding with a sense of a hidden truth. Winyan coughed softly, pulling Tala's focus, but the cloth burned in her mind, a clue to Holt's schemes. She sat by her sister, whispering prayers, determined to unravel the dream weaver's message, feeling it was a spark of hope in her darkening world. Tala carried the woven scrap to an elder's home, her steps quick through the dusty paths. The old woman, her face lined like the desert itself, studied the cloth, her eyes narrowing at the black symbol. She spoke of a trading company that once stole Navajo designs, linking the mark to deceit. Tala's heart raced as she connected it to Holt, her suspicions growing. She sketched the symbol on a scrap of paper, vowing to uncover its meaning. The elder warned her to tread carefully, as powerful men guarded their secrets with violence. Tala thanked her, clutching the sketch, her mind buzzing with possibilities. As she returned to the tent, Winyan's frail smile greeted her, and Tala hid her fear, promising herself she'd follow this clue to protect her sister and her people's legacy. Tala sat by Winyan's side, her decision heavy as stone. She'd stay with the troupe and weave simpler rugs. The words tasted bitter, a betrayal of her heritage, but Winyan's labored breaths left her no choice. She whispered an apology to her ancestors, her voice breaking, and began a plain design, each thread a wound in her heart. Tala worked through the night, her tears falling onto the loom, the rug, a mockery of her skill. She hid her shame from Winyan, forcing a smile as she tucked her sister in. The tent felt smaller, its walls closing in with her guilt. Tala prayed for forgiveness, her hands trembling as she wove, knowing this sacrifice was for Winyan's life. By morning, the rug was done, a hollow offering to Holt, and Tala's spirit ached, fearing she'd lost a piece of her soul. Tala sold the simple rug at the theater, the coins cold in her hand but enough for a bottle of medicine. She rushed to the doctor, her heart lifting as she handed over the payment. Back at the tent, she spooned the syrup into Winyan's mouth, watching her sister's coughs ease, her face softening in sleep. The doctor's warning lingered. The medicine was only a delay, not a cure. Tala's relief turned to dread. The coins already gone, and more rugs needed. She stared at the plain rug she'd woven, its lack of spirit mocking her. Winyan's hand found hers, her weak grip a reminder of why Tala endured. She kissed her sister's forehead, whispering promises to keep fighting. But inside, shame gnawed at her for bending to Holt's will, her pride as a Navajo weaver crumbling. Word of Tala's simple rugs reached the Navajo community, carried on whispers of betrayal. At a tribal gathering, elders turned their backs, their silence louder than words. Tala stood before them, her voice shaking as she explained her need to save Winyan, but their eyes were cold, accusing her of selling their soul. A woman she'd once called aunt spat, "You shame us," and Tala's heart broke, her tears falling freely. She clutched her shawl, the weight of their judgment crushing her. A young boy, her cousin, met her gaze with pity, but even he stayed silent. Tala left the circle, her steps heavy, the desert wind stinging her wet cheeks. Back at the tent, she held Winyan close, vowing to prove her loyalty. But the tribe's rejection cut deep, leaving her to wonder if she'd ever belong again. Tala slipped into Holt's office during a quiet moment, her heart pounding as she sorted through props backstage. Among the clutter, a folded Navajo rug caught her eye, its intricate patterns hauntingly familiar. She traced the weave, recognizing the work of a weaver who'd passed years ago, her stomach twisting at the theft. The rug's edges were frayed, as if hastily copied, confirming her fears of exploitation. Tala's hands shook as she recalled the elders' tales of stolen designs, her anger flaring at Holt's greed. She tucked the rug under her shawl, her breath shallow, knowing this was proof of something sinister. Footsteps echoed nearby, and she froze, her pulse racing, but it was only a stagehand passing by. Tala slipped out, the rug heavy against her chest, her mind burning with resolve to expose Holt's crimes, even as fear of discovery gnawed at her. Late that night, Tala returned to Holt's office, the theater dark and silent. She lit a small candle, its flicker casting shadows as she rifled through papers on his desk. Her fingers found a contract, its words chilling. Navajo artists bound to dangerous performances for pennies. Another document mentioned mass production of rugs, her people's art reduced to factory goods. Tala's throat tightened, her eyes stinging with betrayal as she realized the scale of Holt's plan. She stuffed the contract into her pocket, her hands trembling with fury and fear. A creak from the hallway made her douse the candle, her heart leaping as she hid behind a crate. The silence returned, but Tala's chest heaved, the stolen papers a burning weight, pushing her to act despite the danger closing in. Tala sat by her loom, the stolen contract spread before her, its words a knife to her heart. Holt's plan to churn out Navajo rugs in factories and enslave artists in deadly shows unveiled a monstrous greed. She connected the stolen rug to his scheme, her hands clenching at the thought of her culture gutted for profit. Winyan slept nearby, her coughs softer but constant, urging Tala to fight for more than just her sister. She whispered prayers to her ancestors, begging for strength to stop this desecration. The tent's dim light felt suffocating, Holt's power looming like a storm. Tala's resolve hardened, her fear giving way to a fierce determination to protect her people's legacy. She folded the contract, vowing to find someone who could help, her spirit ignited by the need to reclaim her heritage. Tala met James in a shadowy alley behind the theater. her voice low as she showed him the stolen rug and contract. His eyes widened, horror etching his face as he read Holt's plans to exploit Navajo art and lives. He gripped her hand, promising to help expose the truth, his anger mirroring hers. Tala hesitated, fearing for his safety, but his steady gaze gave her courage. James suggested a federal reporter he knew, a man who might listen, and Tala nodded, hope flickering in her chest. She pressed the contract into his hands, urging him to keep it hidden. As they parted, James's touch lingered, a silent vow to stand with her. Tala returned to the tent, her heart racing with the weight of their secret, praying their plan would spark justice before Holt crushed them. Lyle, Holt's sharp-eyed assistant, lingered near the backstage, his gaze fixed on Tala as she wove. She felt his stare, cold and predatory, her skin prickling with unease. He'd seen her slip out of Holt's office the night before, his smirk hinting at suspicion. Tala kept her movements steady, hiding her fear as she worked on a plain rug. Lyle muttered to Holt later, his voice low, and Tala's heart sank, knowing they were watching her. She tucked the stolen rug deeper under her supplies, her pulse quickening at the risk of discovery. Winyan's soft cough broke her thoughts, grounding her resolve to stay cautious. Tala forced a calm smile, but inside, panic churned, the walls of the theater closing in as Lyle's shadow loomed, a threat she couldn't outrun. Nika stumbled into the tent at dusk, her face bruised, her breath ragged. She collapsed into Tala's arms, whispering that Lyle had cornered her near the market, demanding to know what Tala was hiding. Nika had stayed silent, her loyalty unwavering, but Lyle's fists left marks on her cheeks. Tala's heart shattered, guilt flooding her as she bandaged her friend's wounds. She apologized, tears falling, but Nika shook her head, insisting she'd face worse to help Tala. The bruises were a stark reminder of Holt's reach, and Tala's fear grew, knowing Nika was now a target. She held Nika close, vowing to end this fight before more were hurt. As Nika rested, Tala's resolve deepened, her anger at Lyle's cruelty fueling her determination to bring Holt down. Tala sat by Nika's side, her friend's bruised face a heavy guilt in her chest. She whispered apologies, her voice breaking, but Nika gripped her hand, urging her to keep fighting. Tala shared Holt's plan to steal Navajo designs, her words trembling with rage, and Nika's eyes widened, her own anger flaring. Nika suggested rallying the tribe, her voice fierce despite her pain, believing their people could stand against Holt. Tala doubted the tribe would trust her after her betrayal, but Nika's faith stirred hope. She kissed Nika's forehead, promising to protect her, her heart swelling with gratitude for her friend's courage. As Nika slept, Tala stared at the tent's ceiling, her mind racing with plans, determined to honor Nika's sacrifice by exposing Holt's crimes. A new scrap of woven cloth appeared outside the tent, its pattern intricate, a black symbol pointing to an old warehouse. Tala's breath caught, the dreamweaver's presence a spark in her darkening world. She studied the cloth, its weave guiding her to a place she'd heard held stolen goods. The symbol matched Holt's scrawl, confirming his ties to the theft. Tala hid the cloth, her heart pounding with the urge to follow the clue. Winyan's cough echoed, grounding her, but the dreamweaver's message burned in her mind, a call to action. She prayed to her ancestors, asking for courage to face what lay ahead. Tala tucked Winyan in, her resolve firm, ready to chase the truth the dreamweaver had laid before her. Tala and James crept to the warehouse under a moonless sky, their footsteps muffled on the desert sand. They pried open a rusted lock, slipping inside to find crates stuffed with Navajo rugs, their beauty profaned by Holt's greed. Tala's hands shook as she uncovered a ledger detailing Holt's deal with Carter, a textile magnet to mass-produce her people's art. James cursed under his breath, his anger matching hers, and they stuffed papers into their pockets. Tala spotted tire tracks, a sign the rugs might soon be moved, her urgency spiking. A dog's bark split the night, and they ducked behind crates, hearts racing as a guard passed. They fled with a stolen rug, Tala's chest tight with triumph and terror, knowing these proofs could topple Holt if they reached the right hands. Tala overheard Holt and his wife in the theater's office, their voices low but sharp. Mrs. Holt admitted she knew of the rug thefts, her tone cold, saying she stayed silent for their wealth. Tala's blood ran cold, the betrayal deeper than she'd imagined. Holt's own family complicit. She pressed against the wall, her breath shallow, memorizing every word as evidence. Mrs. Holt's indifference to Navajo suffering stung, a reminder of the world's cruelty. Tala slipped away, her heart pounding, fearing Mrs. Holt's sharp eyes might spot her. Back at the tent, she scribbled the conversation, her hand shaking with rage. Winyan's soft breathing steadied her, and Tala vowed to act swiftly, knowing the Holt's greed could destroy her people if she didn't stop them soon. Tala and James slipped into a dimly lit cafe at the edge of town, their steps cautious under the weight of their stolen evidence. Tala's hands trembled as she handed the Navajo rug and contract to a federal reporter, a wiry man with sharp eyes. She poured out Holt's scheme to steal her people's designs and enslave artists, her voice thick with anger. The reporter nodded, his pencil scratching notes, and promised to investigate, but warned he needed more proof to act. Tala's heart sank, time slipping away like sand, but James squeezed her arm, his quiet strength steadying her. She memorized the reporter's face, fear of betrayal lingering, and tucked a sketch of the rug into her pocket as a safeguard. As they left, the cafe's warmth faded, and Tala prayed to her ancestors, her hope fragile but alive, clinging to the chance that justice might prevail. A letter arrived at the tent days later, the reporter's scrawl confirming he'd begun digging into Holt's dealings. Tala's chest lightened, a spark of hope flaring as she read his request for additional evidence. She shared the news with Winyan, whose weak smile lit up the dim space, her faith in Tala unwavering. But the reporter cautioned about powerful men like Holt, and Tala's stomach twisted, recalling Sheriff Norton's grip on the town. She hid the letter under her loom, her mind racing with plans to gather more proof. Winyan's cough broke the silence, a reminder of the stakes, and Tala kissed her sister's forehead, vowing to keep fighting. She whispered prayers, asking her ancestors to guide the reporter's path, her heart torn between fragile optimism and the fear of failure. James didn't return to the tent that night, and Lyle's shadow loomed over the theater, his eyes glinting with suspicion. Tala's heart pounded as she worked on a plain rug, her fingers steady despite the fear churning inside. He'd caught her leaving Holt's office, and now his gaze followed her every move. Lyle whispered to Holt, their heads bent close, and Tala's throat tightened, knowing they suspected her. She hid the stolen rug deeper among her supplies, her pulse racing at the thought of discovery. Winyan's frail cough echoed, grounding Tala's resolve to stay calm. Lyle's boots crunched closer, his smirk chilling her blood, and she forced a blank expression, her fear a heavy weight. As he finally turned away, Tala exhaled, but the threat lingered, a noose tightening around her. Nika's screams pierced the dusk as she stumbled into the tent, her face bruised and bloodied. Tala caught her friend as she collapsed, her heart shattering at the sight of Nika's swollen cheek. Nika gasped that Lyle had ambushed her near the market, demanding to know Tala's secrets. She'd refused to speak, her loyalty fierce, but Lyle's fists had left their mark. Tala's tears fell as she cleaned Nika's wounds, guilt clawing at her for dragging her friend into danger. Nika gripped Tala's hand, her voice hoarse but firm, insisting she'd endure anything to help. Tala sobbed, promising to protect Nika, her anger at Lyle's cruelty fueling her resolve. As Nika rested, Tala's eyes burned, vowing to end Holt's reign before he hurt anyone else. Tala tended to Nika's bruises, her hands gentle but her heart heavy with guilt. She whispered apologies, her voice cracking, but Nika's eyes blazed, urging Tala to keep fighting. Tala shared Holt's plan to mass-produce Navajo rugs, her words trembling with rage, and Nika's jaw clenched, her own fury rising. Nika proposed rallying the tribe, her voice fierce despite her pain, believing their people could unite against Holt. Tala doubted the tribe's trust in her, their rejection still raw, but Nika's courage stirred hope. She kissed Nika's forehead, her heart swelling with gratitude for her friend's strength. As Nika slept, Tala stared into the dark, her mind racing with plans to honor Nika's sacrifice. She prayed to her ancestors, her resolve hardening to expose Holt's crimes. A new woven scrap appeared outside the tent, its intricate pattern glowing in the dawn. Tala's breath caught, recognizing the Dreamweaver's hand, a black symbol pointing to an old warehouse. She traced the weave, her pulse quickening, recalling tales of stolen goods hidden there. The symbol matched Holt's scrawl, tying him to the theft, and Tala's chest tightened with anticipation. She hid the cloth, her thoughts racing to Winyan's soft coughs, grounding her urgency. The Dreamweaver's clue burned in her mind, a call to action she couldn't ignore. Tala tucked Winyan in, whispering prayers for courage, her heart set on uncovering the truth at the warehouse. Tala and James crept to the warehouse under a starless sky, their breaths shallow as they pried open a creaking door. Inside, crates overflowed with Navajo rugs, their sacred patterns defiled by Holt's greed. Tala's hand shook as she found a ledger listing Holt's deal with Carter, a textile baron, to flood markets with fake rugs. James cursed softly, his anger echoing hers, and they pocketed papers, their movements swift. Tala spotted fresh tire tracks, a sign the rugs might soon vanish, her urgency spiking. A guard's cough echoed, and they dove behind crates, hearts pounding as his lantern swung close. They slipped out with a stolen rug, Tala's fear laced with triumph, knowing these proofs could topple Holt if they reached the right hands. Tala pressed against the theater office wall, her breath held as she overheard Holt and his wife. Mrs. Holt's voice was ice, admitting she knew of the rug thefts, but stayed silent for their lavish life. Tala's blood boiled, the betrayal cutting deeper than she'd imagined, Holt's own kin complicit. She memorized every word, her heart racing, each one a weapon against them. Misses. Holt's callous dismissal of Navajo pain stung, a reminder of their world's cruelty. Tala slipped away, her steps silent, fearing Mrs. Holt's keen eyes. Back at the tent, she scrawled their words, her hand trembling with rage. Winyan's soft breath steadied her, and Tala vowed to act fast, the Holt's greed a fire she'd quench with justice. Tala clutched the tribal council's woven mat, her voice shaking as she stood before the elders. She held up the stolen rug, pleading for their trust, her words raw as she described Holt's plan to gut their culture. A few young faces nodded, but elders scowled, their silence heavy with doubt. An elder demanded proof of her loyalty, his words sharp, and Tala's tears fell, her heart aching to be believed. She spoke of Winyan's illness, her fight for their legacy, but whispers of her betrayal lingered. Tala left the rug, her steps heavy, hoping they'd see the truth. As she walked away, the desert wind stung her cheeks, and she prayed to her ancestors, her soul battered but unyielding. Tala's hands shook as she sealed an envelope with the new warehouse documents, her heart pounding with hope and fear. She slipped into town at dawn, posting the package to the federal agent, her breath catching as she imagined Holt's downfall. In a hurried letter, she detailed Holt's and Norton's schemes, her words sharp with urgency. A reply came swiftly, the agent promising a swift investigation. and Tala's chest swelled with fragile optimism. Winyan's weak coughs echoed in the tent, grounding her resolve, but Nika's warning about Lyle's prowling chilled her blood. Tala hid the agent's letter under her loom, her mind racing with the need to protect her sister. She prayed to her ancestors, her voice trembling, asking for strength to see this through. As she kissed Winyan's forehead, Tala's fear battled her determination, knowing every step forward risked everything she loved. Smoke curled in the distance, and Tala's heart sank as she raced to the warehouse, her lungs burning. Flames devoured the building, Holt's men scattering like roaches, and Tala fell to her knees, tears streaming as she realized Carter had torched the evidence. She clawed through ash, finding a charred scrap naming Carter, its words barely legible but a flicker of proof. Her sobs choked her, the loss crushing her spirit, but Winyan's face flashed in her mind, urging her to fight. Tala pocketed the fragment, her hands black with soot, her rage reigniting. A passerby shouted about Carter's men, and Tala fled, her heart heavy with despair. She whispered to her ancestors, begging for one last chance, her resolve a fragile thread holding her together. James stumbled into the tent at midnight, his face bruised, his clothes torn from escaping Lyle's grasp. Tala gasped, pulling him close, her tears falling as she traced his wounds. He recounted cutting his ropes and fleeing the warehouse, his voice hoarse but fierce with determination. Tala's heart lifted, his survival a spark in her darkness, and they vowed to fight on. James suggested a bold plan, expose Holt at the troupe's next show, and Tala nodded, her fear giving way to resolve. She bandaged his cuts, her touch gentle, her love for him steadying her. They sat by Winyan's side, her soft breaths a reminder of the stakes. Tala prayed to her ancestors, her voice firm, ready to risk everything to end Holt's reign. Tala and James huddled with Nika in the tent, their whispers urgent as they planned a public stand at the troupe's grand performance. Tala clutched a stolen rug, her voice steady as she outlined a speech to reveal Holt's crimes. Nika promised to rally Navajo supporters, her eyes fierce despite her bruises. James contacted the federal reporter, ensuring he'd witnessed the event, his determination matching Tala's pastis. Tala's stomach knotted, fearing Norton's deputies might intervene, but the thought of Winyan's fading strength pushed her forward. She sketched a banner with Navajo symbols, her hands steady, a call to her people. Nika's embrace warmed her, and Tala prayed to her ancestors, her heart pounding with the weight of their final stand. She checked on Winyan, her sister's frail smile fueling her courage. The Dreamweaver stepped from the shadows outside the tent, his face revealed under the starlight. Tala's breath caught as he introduced himself as a former Navajo weaver, once trapped by Carter's schemes. He spoke of escaping slavery, his voice thick with pain, and offered a witness, another weaver, to back Tala's claims. Tala's eyes widened, her heart soaring, realizing he'd guided her all along. She clasped his hand, tears falling, gratitude overwhelming her fear. The weaver promised to stand with her at the performance, his presence a shield. Tala tucked Winyan in, her resolve ironclad, and prayed to her ancestors, thanking them for the Dream Weaver's aid. His quiet nod as he left sparked hope, a belief that victory was near. Tala found a letter among the warehouse ashes, its faded ink exposing Norton's bribes from Holt. Her blood boiled, the sheriff's betrayal a gut punch, confirming he'd shielded Holt for profit. She copied the letter's words, her hand shaking, and sent it to the federal agent, her urgency spiking. The scope of their corruption stunned her, a web trapping her people. But Tala's fear hardened into defiance. She told James, his jaw clenching, his resolve mirroring hers. Tala's thoughts raced to the performance, knowing Norton's men might strike, but she refused to back down. She prayed to her ancestors, her voice fierce, asking for courage to face this Goliath. Winyan's soft coughs grounded her, and Tala vowed to tear down Norton's lies alongside Holt's. Tala stepped onto the stage mid-performance, the stolen rug raised high, her voice cutting through the theater's hum. She shouted Holt's crimes, her words raw, exposing his theft of Navajo art and enslavement of her people. The crowd gasped, their murmurs rising, and the Dreamweaver joined her, his witness echoing her truth. Nika led Navajo supporters into the aisles, their chants for justice shaking the walls. Some white audience members nodded, moved by Tala's passion, while others shifted uneasily. Holt roared from the wings, calling for deputies, but Tala stood firm, her eyes blazing. She clutched the rug, her heart pounding, and prayed to her ancestors, her voice a beacon in the chaos. The theater crackled with tension, her stand a spark ready to ignite change. Federal agents stormed the theater, their badges flashing as they pushed through the crowd. They held up the letter proving Norton's bribes, their voices booming as they arrested Holt. Norton bolted for the exit, but deputies tackled him, his shouts drowned by the crowd's cheers. Holt cursed Tala, his face red, but agents cuffed him, dragging him away. Tala's knees weakened, relief flooding her as the audience clapped, some weeping at her story. She hugged James, her tears falling, but worry for Winyan gnawed at her. The Dreamweaver nodded, slipping into the crowd, his work done. Tala prayed to her ancestors, gratitude swelling, her fight ascending, the weight of victory bittersweet without Winyan by her side. Tala raced to the tent, her heart lurching as she found Winyan still, her breaths gone. The girl's face was peaceful, a faint smile frozen, and Tala collapsed, sobbing, her world shattering. She clutched her sister's hand, whispering love, her voice breaking as memories flooded her. Nika arrived, her own tears falling, and they held each other, grief a heavy tide. Tala recalled Winyan's dream to weave, her spirit now free. She carried her sister to the oak tree they loved, burying her beneath its shade. Tala vowed to honor Winyan's memory, her heart raw but resolute. She prayed to her ancestors, feeling Winyan's presence, a guiding star. The desert wind whispered, and Tala stood, her purpose clear, ready to carry on. Navajo weaving was saved, and Tala returned to her tribe, their respect a balm to her wounds. Holt and Carter faced prison, their empire of theft crumbled, and justice prevailed. Tala and James built a gallery for Navajo art, each rug telling Winyan's story. The tribe embraced her, their pride a new home, and Tala wove again, her patterns alive with courage. She stood under the oak, Winyan's spirit near, her grief a quiet strength. Tala prayed to her ancestors, her heart full, knowing art and bravery had triumphed. The desert bloomed, and she carried on, Winyan's love eternal. Her legacy burned bright, a testament to sacrifice and resilience.